Self-publishing your own novel. Is this a good idea? What are the benefits? How can it hurt you? Should you even bother risking self-publishing your own novel? We're going to be answering those questions and more, and we're starting right now. We live in a new age now with the internet. Decades ago, if you wanted to have your novel published, you pretty much had to go through the publishing houses. You had to submit your book to a literary agent who would then put it to a publishing house. They would look it over and decide whether or not to publish it. And if they said no, you pretty much you were out of luck. You couldn't get your novel published. You had to work on it or write a new one and hope that that would get published. But now with this thing called the internet, you can now publish your own book and have it released all around the world. Now, self-publishing isn't new. For decades, people have published their own novel, but there's been a big drawback, and that is getting your book out there, getting people to know your book exists. Because you can write a book and have it published, pay for it yourself, but the question is, how do you get people around the world to know about it? And this is where the internet comes into play. The internet can help you get published. You can publish your own book online and have people all around the world read it. People from Australia to Italy to Brazil can now read your book instantly. Now, you would think that this would shut down the whole world of publishing companies, that everybody would self-publish their own novel and not bother going through a literary agent and a publishing house. Because chances are, if you get rejected from a publishing house, it's because your book was different, hard to market, and there was always reasons why your book couldn't be published. And maybe the publishing house wanted you to make changes, wanted you to change the ending, but you didn't feel comfortable doing that. So you left your book and left it as is, and the publishing house rejected it. But now with self-publishing, you don't have to change anything. You can keep your book the way it is. And now the world is opened up to self-publishing. But the funny thing is, there are still publishing houses. And we haven't seen publishing houses go away completely, replaced with self-published novels. And there's a big reason for that, and that is advertising. One of the biggest problems when you write a book, no matter how great it is, you got to find a way to get people to notice your work. If you write a great book, how is someone in Australia supposed to know it exists? Yes, they can download it. It is available online through the World Wide Web. You can publish it in America, and within seconds, someone in Australia can be reading it. Problem is, how do you get them to know that your book exists? The same problem that faces publishing houses, the same problem that affects the individual, is the same problem that affects publishing houses, and that is advertising. Getting people to know that your book is out there. Can you spend money on advertising? Yes, but it's going to cost you a lot of money. Just like it does publishing houses. They too have to spend a lot of money to get people to know that your book exists. Because there have been many books written in the past that are great that publishing houses did not have the money to market. So the general public did not know that book existed, to a point where that book goes unread. And that's one of the tragedies of this world, is a great book not being read, simply because the world did not know it existed. But the same problem happens with you in your self-published book. How do you get the millions of people around the world to know that your book is out there? Because a publishing house, they have the advantage of having money, and they have a publishing department where they will hire people whose job it is simply to market your book. They don't write the book. They don't know how to write, but their job is to get it out there, to advertise it. And they have the financial backing of the publishing house to do so. They even have a department dedicated to coming up with the cover of your book. But as a self-published writer, You have to do all of these things. Whereas if you're a writer and you get published, you don't have to worry about the advertising part of it. You don't have to work on coming up with a cover because the publishing houses have people who are dedicated to doing that. They are trained, they're educated, they have experience. But as a self-published author, you have to do all of this without the training or experience. And this is difficult because even back in the 70s and 80s, when you self-published an actual book that you could hold in your hands, no matter how good it was, you had to get people to know it existed. And the same problem plagues self-published authors by using the internet. Another problem with the internet is because it's free to publish and get your book out there, the internet is now flooded with thousands of books that probably would not have been published by a publishing house, but now because you can publish it yourself, the internet is inundated with self-published novels. And the majority of them still need work. They should not have been published because they weren't ready for publication. And the general public has a negative mindset towards self-published novels, thinking, I don't want to read a book that's not good. I don't want to read a book that isn't ready. A lot of people think if your book was rejected by a publishing house, then it simply wasn't good enough to be published at all. But your book very well might be. It might be amazing. But the problem is that the general public's mindset towards self-published novels is negative. So they end up rejecting your novel without even reading a single page, because they figured if it's self-published, it's not good, making your job even more difficult. This is the tricky part of self-published novels. The benefit is when it does sell, all the money goes to you. Because when you do have a book that's published in a publishing house, the majority of the money goes to the publishing house. You do get some, but you get a small fraction. But if you do self-publish and it becomes successful, all the money goes towards you. That is why a lot of people like self-publishing, because they like the financial rewards, and they also like not being told how to write their novel. They don't want to have to change the ending. They don't want to have to change the protagonist, like maybe the publishing house recommended. Or maybe your book is just awkward, difficult to find an audience. As a writer, you might believe that your book appeals to many people. But a publishing house is nervous of this. They need to market your book, or any book, to a specific audience. They need a specific age group. And if they can't find that age group, they're going to be nervous of investing money. Because let's face it, publishing houses put their name and their company on the line every year when they publish a certain number of books. Because it costs a lot of money to publish a book. And if they invest in your book and a few others, and those books don't sell, that publishing house can go bankrupt. And all of those employees are now out of work. So the people who run publishing houses have a very tough job at making sure that they choose the right books to publish. Because if they choose wrong, it could be the loss of their company. They might have sold millions of books 10 years ago, but that was a long time ago. It's all about today. If they invest all their money into your book and it doesn't sell, then that means that the company could go under. Same thing with Hollywood. If they invest a lot of money in a movie and that movie bombs at the box office, that movie company can go under. They might have won Best Picture, an Oscar for Best Picture 10 years ago. But if the movies they make today don't make money, they're gone. Publishing houses take a big risk every time they publish a novel because they're investing a lot of money. And you, as the author of a self-published book, you now have to figure out a way of getting your book media attention. You have to get your book into the eyes of readers, readers who might hesitate to read your book because it's self-published. This is tricky. It's not easy. And this is why when you want to self-publish a novel, you really do have to weigh the pros and cons of writing, because writing is the easy part. When you self-publish, you will know that promoting your book is the difficult part, because a publishing house hires people who specialize in that, and they have the financial backing. But you as an independent writer have to find a way to get people to notice your book. Because as great as it is, if no one knows it exists, they're not going to read it. If you are going to self-publish, you do have to remember you need someone to help you edit your novel. Because a lot of writers, when they finish their novel, they like to publish right away. They want to get their book out there as soon as possible. And it's understandable because you have passion for your book. You believe in it. You believe that book is going to be read and loved by millions, just like the books you read growing up that you still read today. You want someone to experience that same magic with your book. The problem is that your book might have errors, might have grammar or spelling mistakes that you don't even notice. You're convinced that there are no mistakes until someone points it out and you realize, wow, I can't believe all of those mistakes were in there. It's the same thing with the storyline. Maybe the character arc might be weak. You don't know it, but you're convinced that it's great until you have an editor read it and they point it out to you. This is the benefit of having a publishing house. They have professional editors. They have line editors who will go through your book line for line looking for those grammar mistakes. They will have editors who will point out the problems with character arcs or how the story develops, the pacing. As a self-publisher, you may not know that these problems exist. That is why if you're a self-publisher, you have to find someone who will read your book and give you an honest answer. This is why it's not good to have a friend read your book, because your friend is going to tell you it's great. And your friend may not be a professional editor. They may not know what to look for. They genuinely think that it's a good novel. The problem is that they don't actually know the very fundamentals of writing, so they could see an error and not notice it. But a professional editor at a publishing house, that's their job. That's what they're trained to do. They notice that the character arcs are weak. They notice that the plot development or the pacing is off. They can give you advice, you can fix it, and now all of a sudden you have a book that's going to sell millions. But if you self-publish, you may not notice these mistakes. That's why it's important to find a genuine, real editor who can point out these mistakes for you. This is why self-publishing, even today, with the internet, is awkward and it can be frustrating and difficult. Because when you publish, there's thousands of other people who are publishing on the exact same day you are. And a lot of those books aren't ready, but yours might be. But the general public has a negative mindset towards yours because they've seen so many other bad novels. This is the tricky side. There are some benefits of publishing. You don't have to change it. All the money comes to you. And you can write what you want, have freedom, and have everyone read it. The negative side is advertising. The cost of it, getting people to notice your book exists. And these are difficult things that you do have to weigh when deciding to self-publish your book or not. If you enjoyed watching this video, be sure to check out my website, where I have a tremendous number of blogs that will help you become the greatest writer you can be. Because that's what I want to do. I want to help you get published as fast as possible. So I'm going to leave a link to my website in the description down below, where you can go there right now and start reading. If you enjoyed watching this video, be sure to check out my next video on the problems with flashbacks in your novel. Do they hurt your novel? Are they beneficial? Should you have them or shouldn't you? You know what? I'm going to leave a link for that video right here, and you can click on that video right now and start watching.